What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We're back with another video. So there's been a lot of buzz, a lot of noise going on in the sport of boxing right now, especially in the welterweight division. um ever since ever since the Teofimo Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson fight, and in the undercard, we had Keyshawn Davis defeat Jermaine Ortiz. Keyshawn Davis made it very vocal that his next fight after he wanted to get a shot at Devin Haney. A couple days go by, Shakur Stevenson in a few interviews also praised Devin Haney, praising him for being a great fighter, having great skills, being a great talent. But he also stated that he believed in himself that he could defeat Devin Haney, and as every fighter should believe in themselves and in their skills, that they are the best fighter in the world. Devin Haney would, of course, replies stating that, returning the favor to Shakur, also praising Shakur, giving him his flowers for and giving him props for being a great fighter, one of the best fighters in the world, but also stating that he does believe that he beat Shakur Stevenson, and again, as every fighter should. Wow. I'm gonna say that the welterweight division is coming back to life. As the title reads, of course, the welterweight division is coming back to life. In the late 2010s, 2017, 2018, it was making a lot of noise. Errol Spence was, of course, in the peak of his career. We had Danny Garcia also in the peak of his career. Sean Porter was there. We had Jeff Horn upset Manny Pacquiao, although that decision could be very controversial. But that was also stunning for the sport of boxing. It was also something that made a lot of noise, a lot of buzz. Terrence Crawford also was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was maybe moving up to the welterweight division and defeating Jeff Horn. Um, Keith Thurman was there. Keith Thurman was also in his prime, defeating Danny Garcia in a unification fight. And man, at that time, the welterweight division was making a lot of noise. It was making a lot of buzz. I'm gonna say, going into the 2020 decade, some of those fighters ended up having personal issues, whether it was something related with their personal lives, or whether it was injuries, or whether it was other accidents that prevented them or that kept them away from the boxing ring. So the welterweight division kind of died. I don't want to say that it kind of died. I'm sorry. I guess in a way it kind of quieted down. To the point where either some of those fighters retired, they partly were out of the ring for a couple years, and the champions that were there, although respect to every fighter that steps in the ring, the champions were Imantas Stanionis. Boots Ennis had been elevated to IBF champion after Terrence Crawford had vacated the titles to move up to junior middleweight. The WBO champion, it was actually an interim title, was held by Brian Norman, and of course, the WBC champion was also actually an interim champion at the time. It was held by Mario Barrios. The undisputed champion was Terrence Crawford, but like I said, he was also inactive after winning the undisputed welterweight championship, until he moved up to junior middleweight and defeated Israel Madrimov for the WBA junior middleweight title. However, although, like I said, give credit to every fighter that steps in the ring. All those fighters that I mentioned, whether they were secondary title holders as interim champions and potentially or afterwards were elevated to full champion status, they were not household names. Brian Norman was not as known as Errol Spence or as Keith Thurman or as Danny Garcia, Sean Porter. Same thing with although Jaron Ennis was a little more known, obviously because being the mandatory for the IBF, or whether it was when Errol Spence held the title or even once Terrence Crawford beat Errol Spence. He was a little more known, but to the casual fans, he wasn't a household name. He wasn't selling out arenas. He wasn't being promoted big like other fighters were at the time, like Virgil Ortiz, for example. Virgil Ortiz, of course, was still, I guess, already looking to become a contender. He was already a contender, looking to potentially become a world champion, challenger. However, or world title challenger. However, he also ended up having medical conditions or medical issues that caused him to, be inactive for some time, and eventually he also moved up in weight. But the champions that I mentioned, Imantas Stanionis held the WBA regular title. He wasn't, again, another fighter who didn't have a household name. He didn't have a big following, so a lot of people did not know him. If you were to ask a casual fan, he or she wouldn't have known who either Brian Norman was, or Imanta Stanionis, or maybe even Jerome Butsenes. They were not known fighters. The only fighter that was, I guess, a little more known, and it was only because he came onto the scenes for being in there with Javante Davis, was Mario Barrios. He was the only fighter in the welterweight division who held a title or a secondary title that was known to the public. But now the welterweight division has come back to life. Devin Haney moved up in weight. He defeated Brian Norman for the WBO world title. Ryan Garcia is now looking to challenge Mario Barrios, and like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Shakur Stevenson and Keyshawn Davis made it very vocal that they both want a shot at Devin Haney. And man, I used to say that the junior middleweight division was the most stacked weight class when it comes to talent, because we have as of right now fighters like Josh Kelly, who just came off a huge upset against the former IBF champion in Bakram. Xander Sayas is now unified world champion. Sebastian Fundora is there. Joran Butsen is Virgil Ortiz. So I used to say that the junior middleweight division was the weight class that had the most talent. But now I'm starting to say that the welterweight division is taking that spot in my opinion. All those fighters are either moving up in weight, or they have been campaigning at the welterweight division for the last couple of fights. The fighters like, or even Teofimo Lopez, he also made a vocal after the Shakur Stevenson defeat that he's looking to move up to the welterweight division. All those fighters, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, they all once were lightweight prospects. They all started at the lightweight division. So all these fighters moving up, I mentioned it in a couple videos as well. At one point, the lightweight division it was making a lot of buzz. It was making a lot of noise. But now that these fighters are moving up, they're all growing into their, I guess you could say, they're growing into their man strength. Their bodies are getting bigger, so they're all moving up in weight, and they're all now competing at the welterweight division, or they're about to start competing at the welterweight division. Whether it's Devin Haney, who now holds the world title, Ryan Garcia is looking to challenge for a title. Shakur Stevenson, although he began his career at featherweight, he physically can be smaller than Ryan Garcia and then Devin Haney, but size can only do so much. Does it play a role? Yes, it does, but it only does so much. If you have skills, if you have a great boxing IQ, if you have great ring generalship, the size is gonna be the least important factor. Mayweather was smarter than a lot of his opponents. Oscar De La Hoya, Canelo Alvarez, Miguel Cotto, Chino Maidana. He was smaller than a lot of his opponents, and he was able to beat them in their weight class. So I don't see that being an issue for a fighter like Shakur Stevenson, who, like I said, began his career at featherweight, not a lightweight like Devin Haney did, and Teofimo Lopez and Ryan Garcia. Or Ryan Garcia actually started at 130, but eventually he campaigned at lightweight for quite some time. Um, but man, the welterweight division is making a lot of noise. I'm excited to see how these fights happen. Like I said, for some time, the welterweight division was kind of muted. It was kind of quiet. It wasn't making a lot of noise like the lightweight division was at one point. The junior middleweight division, and even the super middleweight division at one point, they were making a lot of noise, a lot of buzz, and the welterweight division kind of quieted down. Now it's making a lot of noise again, and I'm excited to see all these fights. I would love to see Shakur Stevenson get in there with Devin Haney. If you guys don't know, actually, the way the WBO works, if you hold the WBO title in a certain weight class and you decide to move up in weight, you can instantly challenge the WBO champion at that new weight class. I can give you an example. When Diego Corrales defeated Joel Casamayor in the rematch for the vacant WBO title, his next fight, he moved up in weight and he challenged the WBO lightweight champion, who was Acelino Freitas. That's one example that I can use where a WBO champion at a weight class moves up in weight, and you can instantly challenge the new WBO champion. So I can easily see that fight being made. Obviously, Shakur, he just came off a huge win. If anything, what I was expecting was for him to come back down to the lightweight division where he held his WBC lightweight title. We all know what happened there. And I was looking to see that unification with Raymond Murataya. Personally, myself, I don't think Shakur moves up to the welterweight division just yet. If anything, I know there was talks of him maybe even fighting Lamont Roach. There wasn't negotiations or anything thrown out there that was a little too serious in regards to that fight. But I know that he also made it very vocal, or him and Lamont actually, they both made it vocal that they both would be willing to fight each other. So I could see that fight happening at the super lightweight division as of right now. Maybe Raymond Murataya decides to move up in weight. He's a big lightweight. He decides to move up in weight, maybe challenge for a title there. And then we see that unification with Shakur. And then possibly after that, Shakur decides to move up to the welterweight division. Um, Keyshawn Davis, on the other hand, he is not a big enough star like Devin Haney is or like Shakur Stevenson, but he is making a lot of noise. Obviously, other factors that play roles in boxing kind of helped him get, I guess you could say, make more noise or get more of a following. Maybe those factors did not play in his favor. Like for example, testing positive for. I'm sure you all know. I'm not gonna mention it here in the video, but he did test positive for a substance a couple years ago, and then of course missing weight in his first world title defense at the lightweight division. So I guess those factors may not be too positive on in his favor, but they kind of helped him make a little buzz in, or a little more buzz in the sport. And now he's looking to he would like to get a crack at Devin Haney. If anything, I don't see the fight happening anytime soon because of the levels because of the star level each fighter is currently at. Devin Haney's a much bigger star than Keyshawn Davis. So it's kind of like it's more so it plays it affects Devin Haney a little more than it would Keyshawn. Devin Haney would have a lot to lose and, if anything, little to gain. Keyshawn Davis, like I said, has not developed a, a, a respectable resume. Keyshawn Davis hasn't developed a respectable resume just yet. He hasn't. He doesn't have the, I guess you could say, the creditable names in his resume for it to be a big enough fight compared to Shakur's resume, or compared to Ryan Garcia's resume, or maybe even Barrios' resume. Where sure they didn't beat all the fight, they didn't win every fight, but they do have solid names in their resume. Keyshawn Davis doesn't have that yet, so if anything, it would be best for him to campaign at 140, a couple more fights, beat a few more names. I wouldn't mind seeing Keyshawn get in there with Richardson Hitchens. I know Hitchens currently has a world title defense coming up in the Ryan Garcia undercard versus Mario Barrios. Richardson Hitchens will be fighting Oscar Duarte. So once that fight is out the way, I wouldn't mind seeing Keyshawn get in there with Hitchens. And maybe after that, he could try challenging Haney, or he could try calling out Devin Haney. It would make more sense, given the fact that Keyshawn would be coming off a huge win against a creditable opponent. So that's my take on that. And as far as Teofimo Lopez goes, hey, there's a lot of good opportunities for him at the welterweight division. A good opponent could possibly be former world, I guess I could say former ranked fighter, maybe like Giovanni Santillan. Maybe if he wants to test the waters at the welterweight division first. Personally, myself, I wouldn't mind him staying at 140 a few more fights. Have him challenge maybe Dalton Smith, the WBC super lightweight champion of the world. Maybe even challenge Gary Antoine Russell. There's other options available for Teofimo before moving up to the welterweight division. But if he decides to move to the welterweight division, there's a lot of opportunities there too. The WBA champion Rolly Romero is available. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight take place either. We could maybe even see the winner of Barrios versus Ryan Garcia unify against Rolly. If Garcia tends to come out victorious, he could maybe set up a rematch with Rolly, or maybe we could see a unification between Barrios if he's able to defend his title successfully. We could probably see him unify with Rolly or with Haney. They're all great fights. I wouldn't mind seeing any of those guys against each other. Like I said, those are the fights that we need to see. I'm glad they're being made, and it's only gonna keep the sport alive, and it's only gonna keep the sport thriving. So that was it for this video, guys. I wanted to give my opinion on that. I wanted to leave my thought out there on that. Man, the welterweight division is back and is making a lot of buzz, and you know there's a lot of future great fights there. So you guys stay tuned on that, because it's gonna happen. They're gonna happen, and I can't wait to see them all. All right, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.